everyone listening to this, you're not afraid of strangers. Everybody tries to claim they're afraid of strangers. I think there's going to be haters and people are going to make fun of me. No. You're afraid of like Judy, who went to 8th grade with you, who bullied you, and she's connected to you on Facebook. Like everyone's afraid of the people that they know. And the reason for that is they see their friends going out and selling like Arbonne or Prove It, and they're doing MLMs like Herbalife.
Back to another episode of Moving the Mountain, a creative leadership podcast and entrepreneurship. Today's guest is Justin Nault, longtime friend of mine. I think we met when we were like 12. We played in bands together throughout, early 2000s, throughout high school. He went off to Berklee College of Music, got his bachelor degree in songwriting, phenomenal piano player, moved to Nashville right after graduating from Berklee. Then kind of got into entrepreneurship. I mean, kind of always been an entrepreneur, even like throughout high school. We had a clothing company that we sold out of our lockers, basically, going way back here. But then launched this Clovis, became a nutritional therapist. And now you're just saying like you've been launching some e-commerce brands. So that's awesome. So yeah, you want to maybe like kind of take us from moving to Nashville, songwriting, dueling pianos, and how you launched into this other thing.
Yeah, it's interesting. I never knew like that I was an entrepreneur. I guess we were entrepreneurs when we were 13, like playing at the living room and stuff, you know what I mean? Like trying to promote our bands and all that. And then selling daps out of our lockers and little things. Like I remember when I started playing piano in high school and doing like those big shows like Band for Bridget and things like that. Then we started setting up like daps tables and booths and selling. I mean, we were always, you and I both, I think we're always very entrepreneurial. And then as an artist, once I went from Boston to Nashville and just became a pop artist, and that's just constant self-promotion and selling tickets and doing all these things. And so it was always kind of there. And then I did a reality TV show in 2012 that was on ABC called The Big Time. And on the back end of that, I launched my YouTube channel. So I was like, okay, people are going to see me on ABC. I need to give them some content. So I flew Jarrett Blinkhorn. I flew him out to Nashville and we did my first music video and everything. Then I did the YouTube thing for a while and did pretty well there, like a lot of views, a lot of subscribers and things like that. But the TV show was a weird thing for me because I had a miserable time. I mean, I did not enjoy it. The YouTube thing was a hustle for no money. And then I was playing, like at one point I was playing like 300 shows a year. So I started, music has been my only job since I was 17. So I started in Coventry doing those little gigs. And man, it's a grind. Like I fell completely out of love with music. Like I know, I think you've gone through spouts of this as well, but there were times I just wouldn't touch an instrument in my house. Like if I wasn't on stage, getting paid to play music, I wasn't playing music. Wasn't playing at home. I didn't write a song for 8 years, straight up, just didn't write any music. But in 2014, I started playing the Big Bang dueling pianos in 2009 in downtown Nashville. It was like crazy lines out the door every weekend. Like that was a great gig. I had 401k, had health benefits. We made stupid money. It was really great. And then I thought I wanted a dueling piano company, but I didn't want the overhead of a bar. So I launched Rock and Roll Pianos, which I still own, in 2014 with 2 partners. And we bring dueling pianos to you, private events, corporate events, weddings, all that. Like we just show up with a truck, baby grand pianos. It looks just like a dueling piano club in whatever venue you bring us to. So that was cool. And that same year, 2014, was when I founded the LLC for Clovis, but I didn't start selling a product until 2016. So basically 2012 was the TV show. And I really had I'm quite spiritual at this point and like into some, kind of what people would call woo-woo things. And that's been like an 8-year journey to get me where I am now with that. But I realized I was like painfully unhappy, man. I don't know how much we talked as friends back at that time frame, but there was like a lot of alcohol. I mean, the music industry, Nashville is just a booze town, man. Like I can't even live there anymore. Honestly, it's just like party booze, party booze, party booze. Who are you? Who are your friends? How important are you? Blah, blah, blah. Who do you write songs for? Who do you go on tour with? It's just a constant like pissing contest. And I was just deeply unsatisfied and I didn't really know that. And when it hit me like a ton of bricks. The next thing I knew, I was in the Peruvian jungle, drinking ayahuasca with a shaman. And then from there, it was just this really long road of the last 8 years. And there's a guy named Ryan Daniel Moran that's a pretty great entrepreneur. And he had this quote that he said, entrepreneurship is the fastest path to personal development. And that's basically what happened for me. I got to the point where I said, I don't want to do this anymore. I don't want to be on stage. Like I haven't played a gig now in over a year because of COVID. My last gig was March 9th and the shutdown happened March 12th. And that was it. Like Rock and Roll Pianos, we lost all our gigs like everything was wiped out, had to give our deposits back, all that stuff, which is crazy because, Rock and Roll Pianos is like making, it's a multiple 6-figure per year company. And we had to give back a lot of deposits and do SBA loans and PPP and all this stuff that everyone's dealt with COVID. But the main question I get from people right now is like, how much do I miss music? And the answer is none. I like playing piano and singing when I'm alone in my house, when I'm not traveling or something like that. I'm starting to get the love for music back. But ultimately, it's a very roundabout way of saying, I discovered that I'm so glad I never got famous. Like, I'm so glad that didn't happen. I just have found that the biggest thing I want in life is autonomy and just personal freedom. Like the idea that someone can tell me I can't go on vacation because I have a gig lined up, or that like a 9-to-5 person, like that you get 2 weeks of paid vacation. Someone else is in charge of when you get to go on vacation with your family. That seems so fundamentally broken to me that I just can't do it. So e-commerce is the biggest opportunity the human species has ever had for just abundant wealth creation like that. And I don't know why more people aren't just jumping all over it, to be honest. But that's what I found. I was like, if I can leverage the internet and give myself ultimate freedom, I can live as a nomad. I can live wherever I can have multiple houses. Like I have a house in Nashville that's an Airbnb, and a management company handles that for me. So that cash flow pays for me traveling. And like, you can really set up life in a way where you just kind of have no rules. And that's really what I'm trying to do, honestly.
Yeah. I remember, and that's a great question. Like, why don't more people do the e-commerce thing? And I think when COVID hit, that was like my main focus was like e-commerce. And there's a couple things I think that plays into that. Kind of stemming back to like your unhappiness with like you get burnt out. I was doing gigs for a while. I got like super burnt out, and now I'm kind of experiencing the same thing in the wedding industry, where it's just like, oh, the only way to like really kind of set this thing up is at scale, but it's really hard to scale a service model where it's just like you create one product, you can bring that product to market, and like all the work is done up front and kind of developing the market. And then with the right marketing, plan and the right dollars, you bring that in, that you just keep selling it over and over. Whereas like every time with a wedding, you gotta find a new wedding, you gotta do that wedding, and to scale, like you gotta train up shooters. It's like it's a whole thing, and then there's multiple layers, there's multiple tasks, and then it's like a huge liability. Every wedding you take, that's someone's wedding. You can't mess that up, and then you got to be trusting other people to handle that level of responsibility. So it's like a huge liability. And I think this year, COVID hit, and I think we had 200 weddings scheduled for 2020. And we weren't really in a place to take on that many. The most we had ever done was 115, and that was extremely painful. And we had done some things to kind of like set ourselves up where it's just like, okay, we have a full-time editor now. We have someone doing sales. So we had like more pieces in place, but definitely not ready to like execute at a level where it's just like, this isn't going to be challenging. And so a lot of those weddings, I think we rescheduled 96 weddings. And still, I think we still shot like 50 weddings that year or last year. But my main focus was just like, yeah, it's sustainable if you do it right, but still like you could, if you, with like a product model, like there's so much more you can do. But to answer that question, why aren't more people doing it? And I think people's turnoff with it, which is my turnoff with it, is like the people that are selling it, the people that are pitching it. It's like super scammy sounding, and it's just, it's like if you're really making that much money, you're selling these classes now to do it. So it's like that was my hesitation with it. But the fact of like finding an Amazon product and selling it, and I think also like someone who's just starting out, I think you kind of got like your foot in the door with something that you're super passionate about, Clovis. You developed it and you're trying to bring it to market. So you kind of figured out how to bring it to market. So maybe it was a little bit easier that second time around, and maybe a little bit like simpler, Yeah, maybe expound on that. Like, what is that process of like developing a product? And if someone was going to launch an Amazon, like what does that look like realistically?
Yeah, Amazon has got to be one of the hardest marketplaces. Like, I wouldn't launch an Amazon brand myself. So just to clarify what I did with MedChoice is I'm a 25% owner in MedChoice. So I had to put up a financial investment to buy that 25%, which funded the initial round of inventory. I helped with the product formulation because of my nutrition knowledge. And then I have that amazing audience that we were able to launch to and get reviews really quickly. So I brought a lot to the table. But 50% owners of MedChoice are these two founders of an Amazon brand that have done multiple 8-figure exits. So these guys are just Amazon masters. Like, for me, my learning curve for Amazon would be way too much. Like, I wouldn't want to go the Amazon route. It's just too difficult. So Clovis is all built on Shopify, which I think is a much easier platform for most people to go to, would be Shopify. But yeah, so for me, it was a passion project, man. I didn't know, I hadn't been exposed to entrepreneurs like the ones that I know now. And it's really funny you say that, because all the people that are like one trick ponies, like they hit a home run and they had like a 7-figure exit and they're like, oh, I sold my company for $5 million and I owned such and such percent of it. So now I have 1.5 million in the bank, and they realize 1.5 million is not really that much money, but they got lucky with that brand. So they start selling courses and doing all these things. The people that I know that are 9-figure net worth, they're not selling courses. You know what I mean? They're just not. So it's the reason it feels scammy and cheesy and like that is because it's people that are just like really struggling to replicate the success that they found. So they're selling what they did the first time around to people. And there's a reason why if you have 1,000 people that buy this such and such guy's online course, none of them end up with 7 and 8-figure exits, because what he did back then might not have mattered now. Like, I'll give you an example, like Megan with her company Overtone. She was 24 years old. She's 31 now. Well, at 24 years old, she launched her brand on the back of influencers. Influencers on Instagram, that wasn't even a word. Influencers wasn't a thing. There was people with like 15,000 followers, but nobody was getting paid for Instagram posts. Nobody was getting paid for sponsorship. None of that stuff existed. Influencer marketing wasn't even a thing. So if you try to do exactly what she did back then, right now, it's not going to work the same way. Because those same influencers she probably got for free because they didn't know they were influencers. That wasn't a thing. Now they're like, I want $250 per Instagram post, you know? So the entire climate is just changing in a way where like you really got to try to be ahead of the curve in some way, which is really difficult to do. But with Clovis, I had no intention of Clovis being what it was. And this is just one of those things of life has plans for you. I mean, I didn't know that, 15 years of onstage experience with music and dueling pianos is a lot of like improvisational comedy. I didn't know that was going to make me really good on camera, because I launched Clovis Gary Vee style. I literally just consumed all of Gary Vaynerchuk's content. And he was like, if you want to be able to monetize things for the rest of your life, build an audience. So that's what I did. I went Facebook Live once a week and did something called an Ask Me Anything. I did 115 of those straight. So like well over 2 years of those, and chopped up those clips and put them on Instagram stories, and made the hour-long video a podcast. Now I have over 200 podcast episodes. And so
And
I
you did
just
a lot
really
of that
went
yourself
hard.
too. You were cutting up that content yourself. And in the beginning, I'm sure like you probably didn't have that many viewers. And I kind of watched that gradual growth. Like I was like, man, he's staying really consistent to this. And I think that's probably the hardest point. That's kind of like what we're doing now. We're in this phase, like we're doing this podcast. It's just like the thought is just like, and especially too, you buy all this equipment and you're like, the thought is like, who's actually going to watch this? And staying consistent through those times where it's just like building that audience. Like, I'm sure that was very challenging.
Yeah, oh, it was. And there's a fear of what other people think that I don't have the same way that other people do, right? Because you've watched my whole life, man. Like, I've always just been like, I don't really give a shit what anyone says. I'm gonna do this my way, and like guidance counselors were like, oh, you're gonna go be a musician in Nashville? That might not be a great idea. I was like, yeah, it is, So I just like I've always done things differently. Like, I've never had a 9-to-5 job. Never. Like the closest thing I had to a 9-to-5 that ever existed was Famous Footwear with you when we were 17. You know what I'm saying? So it's just like I never did the thing.
And we won't
But what
talk
I
about what
find
happened
is,
there.
you what?
We won't talk about what happened there.
Yeah, no, we'll leave that one out. My first, we'll call that my first e-com endeavor.
/ first run-in with the law.
Yeah, exactly. But yeah, man, it's just this. I think a lot of people are really scared. Two things I've run up against is people really care about other people's opinions, and what I've explained to a lot of e-commerce people is like to do it the way that I did, which is basically become an influencer first, and then have products to sell. Right. So build the audience, sell the audience things. And I firmly believed in what I was doing. The Perfect Paleo powder was the first protein powder I invented in my kitchen. And I did that because my brother's daughter was born terminally disabled. She was having 300 plus seizures a day. They gave her less than 3 years to live. She was, within a week of life, she's hooked up to all these machines. They did over $1 million in testing. It turns out she has this rare genetic disorder that, like, she's one of 96 cases in the world, and I don't think any of them have ever lived to adulthood. And crazy, she's 7 years old right now. She's considered like 100% disabled, and she's, requires a nurse living in the home and all these things. It's a really sad situation. But what happened was she has a feeding tube in her stomach, and they were feeding her something called keto-cal. So the ketogenic diet was initially created for epilepsy in infants. That's it. It stops epilepsy dead. Savannah didn't have epilepsy, but they still tried that with her because she was having these horrible seizures. But this keto-cal baby formula, I think it's made by Gerber, was garbage. I mean, like hydrogenated vegetable oils, artificial sweeteners, just toxic sludge that they're like putting in babies' stomachs in every hospital in the world, in the pediatric ICU. So I asked the neurologist about it, and I was like, look at these ingredients. Word for word, he goes, I never thought to check that. And I was like, oh my God. And like my entire understanding of the medical system was just like shattered. I was like, there's nobody looking out for us. These guys are just doing what they're told blindly. Medical school, the textbooks in medical schools and the curriculum and everything is paid for by pharmaceutical companies. That's why all the textbooks are like, for X symptom, give this medication. It's like, where do you think Harvard University came from? Think that just popped up in the middle of Cambridge, just like nobody paid for that? No, pharmaceutical companies paid for it, and it's a fucking marketing funnel. It's really interesting when you look at it that way. Like, pharmaceutical companies are the ultimate marketing funnels. They're great at what they do. So I invented a powder. I bought food dehydrators and processors and got all these paleo superfoods and hit up guys I knew like Rob Wolf and learned a lot about these different foods and dehydrated them and blended them with coconut milk, and eventually had this thing that the Vanderbilt neurologist allowed me to give through the feeding tube of my niece that was better for her than that toxic sludge. And then I just read the 4-Hour Work Week. I was like, I'm going to turn this into a product. So I created a protein powder out of that. But it was very much a passion-based thing. And then after I started the podcast, people started asking me for nutrition advice and stuff. So I ran like 400 custom nutrition plans for 400 individuals. I just ran custom plans for them for free in exchange for before and after pictures. And I mean, I don't know how many people I've helped lose 100 pounds, literally. So they're like holding their jeans out, like two of themselves used to fit in their jeans. And then I turned that into custom nutrition plans and started getting experts on the podcast and authors and influencers and all these people. So it just became bigger. It became like crazier than I ever could have imagined. I didn't know it was going to turn into this crazy thing. Now here I am, like looking to scale that in a very big way. I'd like to roll out like a dozen new products over the next 12 months. I just brought on a new CMO. I've never done paid traffic. That's an interesting thing, is like I built Clovis completely organically. So the Gary Vee model of building an audience first really does work if you are super consistent. I mean, you're right, dude. Like when I started, Facebook groups have been great for me. When I started the Clovis Academy, it was a private Facebook group. I think I had 40 members like in the first couple of weeks, and now it's like, almost 3,000. But yeah, in the beginning, like my Facebook lives were getting 7 viewers, and those were just like my friends on Facebook.
Yeah, what is that like in those like beginning stages? And like, you've obviously scaled the Clovis and now this next thing to like the next level. What is it like during those first stages where you're getting 7 people, and they're your friends and they're dropping out like in the first 15 minutes? How did you like push past that?
Yeah. I wish I had a good answer for that. I think I just kind of had blind faith in the thing, where I was like, I'd seen Gary Vee's content and I knew what he was doing. And I knew that, I think because I had done it before as a musician, when I started my YouTube channel, you start with 0 subscribers, and then you get like a couple thousand subscribers, and then you have a video that does 100,000 views. Well, like my first videos did 300 views. And then all of a sudden I cover the right song at the right time, and Blurred Lines does 110,000 views. And I'm like, whoa, wait a second. I think I had some kind of small doses of proof that this was, actually something that could happen. So maybe that kept me going. And then I did, like, with the smaller audiences, it's easier to engage. Those 7 viewers, someone might reach out and be like, hey, I have this autoimmune condition. I've had IBS my whole life. And like, I listened to you. You just said that like there's 2 different kinds of dairy. Like there's A1 dairy and A2 dairy. I didn't know there's different kinds of dairy. And I'm like, oh yeah. And I was communicating with people who were seeing real impact from the things that I was doing. So if you can stop looking at it as the size of the audience, is like, if you feel like you're making an impact, it's going to be a little bit easier. Now that's tough because, you might be someone who, I'll give an example. Like my cousin, Josh, just got into this, and he makes these clay figurines, and people, apparently there's a whole niche audience of people that make these like clay figures in their house, and they're really creepy and dark and very like Edward Scissorhandsy and like just really kind of cool stuff. And he makes these tutorials and like how to make these clays, and he's making money doing that. I mean, there are people like reviewing peanut butter brands on YouTube that make 80 grand a year. It's just like there's another guy who once a week just throws himself on something painful. Like he'll cover a table with like barbed wire and thumbtacks, and he just jumps on it and he writhes around in pain, and he has a merch like clothing line. The guy makes 7 figures a year, you know? So it's like, I think people think it's really big and scary. And I think everyone also has a focus on like getting rich. So they see entrepreneurs and they're like, there's Mark Zuckerberg, and then there's me, and I'm a 9-to-5er, and there's like no in between there. There's this gap. And the other biggest thing I've seen, so fear of what other people think of you. And to anyone listening to this, you're not afraid of strangers. Everybody tries to claim they're afraid of strangers. I think there's going to be haters and people are going to make fun of me. No. You're afraid of like Judy, who went to 8th grade with you, who bullied you, and she's connected to you on Facebook. Like everyone's afraid of the people that they know. And the reason for that is they see their friends going out and selling like Arbonne or Prove It, and they're doing MLMs like Herbalife, and everyone gets annoyed with that. That's not an entrepreneur. This is not your company. You don't own that company. That company, the CEO could say something racist on Twitter and Herbalife's getting erased, and there's nothing you can do about it. You don't control that, right? So it's the entrepreneurship has so many levels, and people are so confused because it's scary to start your own brand. So they go to something like Arbonne, but they see their friend posting about Arbonne, and all their friends are like, oh my God, if Judy serves me one more ad about the Arbonne products, like I just can't stand her. But like, it's all people that you know. You're concerned about the opinions of people that you know. That's what I've found for most people. And then the second part of it is just scarcity mindset. You think that like that level of success is for somebody else. Like when I explain to people that like $10,000 a month for an entrepreneur, like $10,000 a month in cash flow is not that far off and not that difficult to do if you literally just follow blueprint steps. Like I could tell you a couple of books and follow those blueprint steps, and you can make that in monthly cash flow. And it breaks people's brains in this weird way because they're in the societal norm of like, I have a salaried position, or I have an hourly position, and I have a 401k, and I have health benefits. And all those systems that they're bought into are just like taking money out of their paychecks, and they're paying too much. And they're like, I don't have health insurance and a 401k, right? And like, you know, we were both involved with Wealth Factory and all those different things. Like I just do things differently, and it's very scary for people. They have this weird scarcity mindset where they're like, everything I have, I must cling to with white knuckle fists. If I lose $1, I'm going to die. And then it's just going against the grain of what everyone else does, because there's going to be opinions from basically everyone. And I've got a lot of opinions from people who are like, why do you, like, you're a musician. Why'd you invent a protein powder? How come you can just sell protein? Because I just can. You can sell whatever you want, you know, tomorrow. It's just, there's nobody stopping you from doing it except just internal dialogue.
Yeah. Something that stood out to me, this is a little bit off topic, but when the pandemic hit, you had mentioned like America is going to get hit worse because we have a higher obesity rate in our country. And that ended up being true. Like at least we started to. And you saw that in Italy too. Could you kind of like talk through that a little bit?
Yeah, 100%. So in America, 88% of adults have metabolic dysfunction. That's crazy, right? Over 70% are overweight, and I believe it's like some 30% or something like that are obese, which is considered at least 30 pounds or more overweight. And then all the things that come with that, right? So metabolic dysfunction, that 88% number, is detailed by the mainstream medical community. So they're saying it's either like your waist circumference is too big, or your BMI is off, or your blood pressure is off, or your fasting glucose is off. It's all these different markers that they have of average health. Now, go to the airport and look around, right? I hate to sound like a jerk there, but like average in America is literally dead. Like we're on the beaches out here in Tulum, and like I'm constantly just looking around, like nobody has visible muscles of any kind. It's just like the human species over the last 10 years has just changed dramatically because of the food environment. So you have 88% of people who are suffering from some level of metabolic dysfunction. What we know now, and I said this in March, I was doing podcasts on this in March, and people thought I was nuts. I was like, the number one risk factor for complications with COVID is obesity, because obesity leads to hypertension, leads to insulin resistance, leads to diabetes, all these things. And I knew, I was telling people to supplement vitamin D. I'm like, please supplement vitamin D. Like everyone in America has low vitamin D levels. Sure enough, 6 months later, mainstream is like, hey, it looks like vitamin D might be helpful against COVID. It's this crazy thing where like everyone is looking for a magic pill. And now we live in this world where it's like, hey, get a vaccination, bring your vaccination card to Krispy Kreme and we'll give you free donuts. And you're going, oh my God, like the number one risk factor for complications from this is your metabolic health, period. Period. That's literally it. And what the mainstream loves to do is they will tweak and twist things, or they'll say, like, this guy was a 60-year-old marathon runner. Look how skinny he is. He died from COVID. Another healthy person, victim of COVID. No, 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 no. I work with professional athletes. I literally do nutrition for professional MMA fighters. I've worked with a lot of professional athletes at this point. People that train that much have some of the weakest immune systems on planet Earth. Like if there's one thing we know, it's that overtraining is extremely immunosuppressive. So your immune system just dies. If you're running 12 miles a day, your immune system is trash, I promise you. But the mainstream community doesn't know that. They go, that guy's skinny and he runs. And those are two things that by societal standards are quote unquote healthy. So COVID just killed another healthy person. No, that guy had the immune system of an 80-year-old diabetes patient because he was punishing his body every day. That's not a smart thing to do. Or they'll say a bodybuilder got hit by COVID or whatever. And you're like, bodybuilders are extremely unhealthy. I've seen the blood work of bodybuilders. They look fantastic, but that's a very unnatural thing. If you go find indigenous tribes that are like living like we used to as hunter-gatherer ancestors, nobody looks like The Rock. There's nobody carrying around that kind of muscle mass. Like what you need for supplements and the overconsumption of food that you need to maintain this giant, very unnatural body. That's not a natural body. That person's not healthy. It's not normal. This is not homeostasis. Like you're having to hack your body and hack your physiology in a way that makes you look unnatural like The Rock. That's not a healthy person. You see what I mean?
Yeah.
So we just have these twisted outlooks of what health is.
What would you say to like the average person? Like, I mean, we kind of live in this bubble of America where it's just like, it's convenience. We live like a very fast, like convenient lifestyle where it's just like get up, go to work, stop, get, basically what I call milkshakes in the morning, from Dunkin' Donuts with the caramel swirl, all that. Like, how, like if you weren't trying to be like, super, how do you make like, what does health look like? From like just like a very like, hey, I'm not gonna try to go crazy. I'm not gonna try to like, weigh my food every morning. But like, what's the proper amount of exercise I should get? Because I didn't know that too much is actually a bad thing. And what kind of foods should I just be like eating on a daily basis? How much food should I be eating? Like, what is that? What is just like I want to just be healthy and not go crazy with it.
Yeah, there's an ebook that I have called Play It Safe, and safe is basically I just take each letter. So SAFE, species appropriate fasted exercise. There's a couple of really simple things you can do to be an extremely healthy individual. Species appropriate is a term that just says, is this food appropriate for the species? And the easiest way to get this across is to use analogies of the forest. So I tell people it's like this is all of nutrition, everything I've learned about nutrition, like literally studying biochemistry 6 hours a day. Like this is everything I've learned can be broken down into this analogy that I share with people. If you're walking through the forest for the rest of your life, you are never going to stumble upon a bagel tree. It's just not there. So is a bagel a species appropriate food for a human? For our hunter-gatherer ancestors, is that a species appropriate food? No. Because what's happening is the amount of wheat and all the things that need to happen to process that food, you take a bite of it, that is an amount of wheat and grains and all the different proteins that exist in grains. It's what I call a hyperphysiological dose. It's more than you could ever find in nature. The same goes for if you walk through the forest for the rest of your life, try to create just 1 tablespoon of almond butter. Just go out and try to get everything necessary to create a single tablespoon of almond butter. And people will eat a jar of almond butter in a sitting. The body literally doesn't know what to do with that. Technology grew exponentially. Human evolution did not, right? We don't know how to handle almond butter. You don't know how to handle a 16-ounce glass of orange juice. Go out in nature and find everything you need to create me a 16-ounce glass of orange juice. It's not species appropriate. So it's truly that simple. If you use like the walking through the woods, there are no bagel trees. If you were to really do that, and then I'll even make it easier and say, just follow that 80% of the time. I don't care if 20% of the time is Domino's pizza and your caramel mocha latte. It's just most days you should order a black coffee, maybe with a splash of coconut milk or almond milk. And maybe you should fast 12 hours a day. What I call a circadian fast is like if you stop eating at 8 p.m., just don't eat again until 8 a.m. You don't need to do intermittent fasting and fast for 16 hours, 20. You don't need any of that stuff. And when I say fasted exercise, if every human did just this, ate a species appropriate diet every single day, fasted 12 hours, and at the 11-hour mark, just went for a 20-minute walk outdoors, that's it. That's all of the exercise in your life. That's it. Those two things, species appropriate, fasted exercise. I guarantee anybody listening to this could improve their health in 10 days.
Wow.
Yeah.
And now what if you wanted to like get in shape? What does that look like realistically?
Yeah, I can give you an example. I really like to hack physiology. So I'll try not to use any like big crazy words here or whatever, but I do when I'm traveling, I find a gym. Like my Instagram story has me in a gym right now because there's a gym here at the resort. So I'll find a gym and I do literally just 2 full body heavy lifting protocols, take about 30 minutes twice a week. And then the rest of the time, I'm going for walks on the beach. I'm jumping in the ocean. I like to do backflips and handstands because I love gymnastics. So it's just daily movement. But for me to look the way that I do, like I like having a 6-pack. I like having pecs and biceps, So I can literally do all that in 2 lifting sessions a week. So maybe an hour a week, like actually spend inside of a gym.
That's crazy. Yeah, because I see you on Instagram. You're doing like, ice baths or like cold showers. You talk about that a lot. It seems like the workouts you're doing are crazy. I see you doing those rings, but you're just doing like high intensity training a few times a week.
Yeah. So even at my maximum, what you saw in the mountain house in Colorado with me on the rings and all that, that was actually, I was specifically trying to get better at gymnastics skills. And that's 3 hours a week total. I do 3 1-hour workouts. Now, when I'm traveling, that's like the most you're ever going to see me train is like 3 sessions a week of like actual resistance training. And those are skills, handstands, ring muscle ups and all those. And I mean, I've also been, I've been lifting weights for 18 years. So it's like, I've done every single possible thing you could think of in terms of fitness. I've done from jujitsu to boxing to powerlifting, all the beach body programs, everything, yoga, everything you can think of. So I have a core foundation of fitness that allows me to kind of now take it easy a little bit. But when I'm saying like when I'm traveling, when I'm living this kind of nomad life, like I'm in a random kitchen in Casamalca in Tulum because the staff is really cool and let me sit here. But yeah, so I will do minimum effective dose. I'm not someone who wants to live in the gym. This is a huge problem I see in health and wellness, right? Everyone who's unhealthy follows all these people on Instagram whose job it is to be healthy, right? They follow The Rock. They follow some Instagram booty model. They follow, Dr. Mark Hyman, whose job is to talk about nutrition. And all of a sudden, the gap between that, like the gap between like an average person and these people who are getting paid to be healthy, that's a Grand Canyon size gap. And the comparison becomes absolutely toxic. So I'm like really careful to tell people, I'm like, hey, I'm not a gym rat. I don't live in the gym. I don't want that for myself. I want to travel. I want to have freedom. I want to, go to dinner and order the dessert. I want to be able to do that. So if I just do those core little things that I told you about, I'm basically doing species appropriate fasted exercise. I go for a walk on the beach every morning with nothing but black coffee in my system. And then I do those 2 heavy resistance training workouts for about 30 minutes once a week, twice a week. And that's it. The rest of the time, I'll do some backflips and do some handstands and swim around the ocean and go for walks in town. It's just, it can be very, very simple if you're not trying to be The Rock. If you're trying to be The Rock, you have to spend 6 hours a day in the gym and you have to take all the steroids and you have to have a supplement regimen that's $1,000 a month. Like, stop comparing yourself to those people. If you're at a 5 out of 10 in health, you can do 2 things and get to a 9 out of 10 in health for sure. If you want to be an elite, absolute optimized athlete, the top 1% of the 1%, like The Rock or some Rich Froning, some CrossFit athlete or something, you're going to have to dedicate your whole life to that. And most people don't want that. I say this on podcasts. I was on a podcast with Abel James, my buddy. He runs a podcast called The Fat Burning Man. He's crazy popular. And I was like, dude, most people don't want to be Justin. Most people don't want to be Abel. I talk to people about the way that I live just traveling, like nomadically or staying in hostels or whatever. And like, it literally gives people anxiety. Like not everybody wants the same lifestyle that I do. Not everybody wants the same physique that I do. Not everybody gives a crap about doing backflips on the beach. I just like those things,
Yeah. Yeah, the travel like lifestyle. I've seen you been like traveling like quite a bit. I did some traveling probably like in my like mid-20s, and like it was fun for a while. I think it was like something I had to get out of my system. But then after a while, I was like, man, I kind of like being home. Kind of just being in my apartment. I I just went to the Bahamas and it was fun. Like we went swimming with the dolphins and that was like something that was like on my bucket list. And now granted we didn't like travel outside the resort, which I really wanted to do. Guy I was with just kind of like wanted to hang in the pool and whatnot. And I think I would have had like more fun because I'm more of like an adventurous kind of person when it comes to like vacationing and less of like, hey, let's sit in the pool and, you know, just kind of chill. But yeah, all in all it was good, but it's just like, yeah, I kind of want to be home. Kind of want to come back home and like work.
I totally get that, man. And it's something that's interesting is like the way that I differentiate that is there's travel and then there's vacation. So we have this like societal standard of, again, like most people are working 9 to 5s and they know that they get like somewhere between 7 to 14 days of paid vacation a year. And that becomes like, okay, we're going to go to Sandals in Cancun. It's like an all-inclusive resort and we're going to drink all the daiquiris and get sunburnt. And then we're going to come back home. You know, whereas when you're traveling, like I've been traveling now for what will be over a month. I'm here until the 18th and then I have no plans. I don't know where I'm going. I might go to Costa Rica. I might go to Belize. I don't know. But so for instance, here in Tulum, I have my morning routine. I meditate, I journal, read my Kindle, go for walks on the beach, open up my laptop, check my email. I mean, I think I worked yesterday for about 4 hours, probably of like really deep work on my laptop. And that's traveling. Like traveling to me is living in a different place. So the same routine you have in your apartment, you could have in an Airbnb. People do this weird thing. Again, it's a scarcity thing. Everywhere I've gone, from Thailand to Mexico, Norway, Amsterdam, wherever, everyone's always like, oh my God, that's such a once in a lifetime opportunity. And I'm like, no, it's not. I could stay here for 6 months. I could come back next year. I could go back to Thailand. It's anywhere I go, I'm living there. I'm not on vacation. I don't drink alcohol out here. Like I've not been drunk once in the last 4 weeks. Like I don't really party. There's one night we had like this great dance party night in Isla Holbox. They had a dance party in the streets and I was like salsa dancing and having some fun and stayed up till like 3 a.m. I went to bed at 9:30 last night. You know, so like I'm in Tulum, Mexico, which is like party central, especially during COVID, and I don't care. I'm just living. You see? So like traveling is much different than vacation. It's just so many people are so pent up and they don't travel. So when they get to the place that they're on vacation mode clicks in their brain. So they eat all the crappy food and they don't work out at all and they drink all the alcohol. Next thing you know, you get back from vacation and you're spent. You need a vacation from vacation. You know? If you can treat it of just living in a new location, it's pretty sustainable.
Yeah. So going back to like that e-commerce, like that's something that we're exploring right now because we did realize it's like, okay, we're in a service industry, you know, where we're killing ourselves to like, you know, scale up. We're doing, you know, 215 weddings, I think this year. Quite an undertaking, you know, growing staff, things like that. So it's just like, you know, if we're trying to now break down what we do into like how we do it and like make a course of like how we scaled, or at least like, you know, get it's like, yeah, how did we do it? Kind of write down that like write down our shots. Like this is how we scaled from, you know, doing 20 a year to like breaking into like all of Rhode Island's like most exclusive venues, and now like bringing that to market. And basically everything that you learned through like trial and error, like you said with like Clovis, like all the mistakes that we made, you know, don't do those. Like here's what we boiled it down to. Here's what really works, and you can just like focus on this and hopefully be successful. I mean, obviously it's gonna take some work. So we're trying to build out this product. What would you say like would be the first steps? And someone else who's like maybe in that case wants to transition from like a service model into a product model, like what would be the first steps? Like once you have the product, or maybe the product is not the first step, maybe it's market research. What kind of like guidance would you give there?
Well, it's interesting because like you're in such a giant industry. Like there are so many wedding photographers and videographers that like the market already exists. You know that, right? There's like with me too. Like people thought I was absolutely crazy because I made a protein powder. Like the supplement industry is like a $40 billion a year industry. Like talk about competition, right? But all you have to do is differentiate yourself. Like I think I sell the most expensive collagen protein superfood in the world right now. You know, and that I did that on purpose. I created it and I threw the kitchen sink at it. All of the best ingredients. This thing is incredible. I've never been this proud of something I've created in my life. It's the best supplement on the planet. And I believe that. So I sell it for a price that is twice what my other collagen protein competitors are selling because it doesn't have all those added things. So one is just like differentiating yourself, which you've kind of done because you've murdered, man. Like 215 weddings a year. That's insane. That's like true success. So the number one thing you have to do, the same way I did 400 custom nutrition plans and just showed the before and after pictures, you got to brag about yourself, man. You got to tell people what you've done, how many weddings you've done, what you charge for weddings, what your yearly revenue is for your company. Like if you're making $3 million a year, people need to know that. And they're just like, oh my God. And then create the course, make a really badass course. And then whatever the price you think it should be, triple it. Like it's like really, it's like this, because you're dealing with people like the types of photographers and videographers that want to scale like you did, they have to already be successful. Like if I just bought my first Canon Rebel T3 camera, right, and I've never shot a wedding, I don't want your course. So where you do have to differentiate the market is you need to figure out who your customer avatar is, because it's not an amateur. I've never shot a wedding in my life. I'm not going to pay $5,000 for your course. You know what I mean? Now, if I own a company, I got a couple of employees, I'm doing 400K a year in weddings total, and then maybe my profits, 25% or whatever, then I want your course. I want to know how to scale. And that's the thing is all of a sudden, you don't need 10,000 customers at, a $50, a $47 course. You need a few customers at $5,000, and you need that every month, and your cash flow goes through the charts and it makes money while you sleep and all that. So it's really, really important that you need to have proof. Basically proof of concept. Like, why am I buying a course from Sean? And this is why you have these guys that are like, hey, I had an 8-figure exit 6 years ago and I'm still selling that same product. And they're probably making, multiple 6 figures a year just selling their courses, because they did it once. They have the social proof that they did the thing.
Yeah, that was something we were thinking. There's this course called Full-Time Filmmaker, and I think their target audience is someone who like has never picked up a camera. So he's breaking down like what the shutter speed, what shutter speed is, what ISO is, and he's like, these cameras if you're at this price point, these cameras if you're at this price point, and so on and so forth. And it's just like so granular, and it's awesome. He does such a good job with it. I think he's like one of like the top 1% of like people who sell, products in e-commerce. But we're really like, yeah, it's not for that. We're kind of like aiming towards someone who's probably already started, knows how to use the camera, is shooting weddings, and they're trying to refine their product and get to that next level. And that's something too, like you had mentioned, like you kind of got to like brag, and it's like get on your story, start talking about it, and definitely not that person. And I'm like, I have to like become that person, even like doing the podcast as part of it. And then I was just wondering like how. And that's what you see. I see other people doing it. They're like, here's what I made in revenue. And you got to be like transparent about that stuff. And like, yeah, it's like, it's one thing to be like, yeah, we scaled from like 20 weddings to 200, but it's like, start naming like values. It kind of feels very like braggy, you know what I mean? But it's just like, it kind of seems like, oh, I'm going to have to start doing this in order to show proof of concept and show that like, this is a success story and here's how you can do it too.
Yeah, exactly. Because you might be doing 200 weddings at $500 a piece. I'm not interested in learning how to do that.
Right.
You see what I mean?
Yeah.
Yeah. It's just like, it's not a thing that I'm interested in. And it's just a way for you to kind of pad the numbers. Like, yeah, I did 215 weddings. Like I know dueling piano players that do weddings for $400. I won't touch a wedding for less than $4,000. If you want to hire rock and roll pianos, we are $4,000 for 3 hours. And if you live 8 hours away, I'm going to charge you for all the travel. I'm going to charge you for flights to get the equipment there. I'm going to charge you for hotel rooms. You're looking at a $10,000 to $12,000 wedding. For sure. That's the only way you're getting me out there. And if you, oh my God, that's so expensive. I go, cool, see ya. You know what I mean? Like that. And that's the thing is like, you need to know exactly who your core demographic is. Cause there's a lot of guys like you with successful photography, videography companies that want to learn what you did. So another way to look at it is like, I think about when I'm coaching people, like I used to do a lot of one-on-one coaching. Now I do like private clients. I only take on 5 a month. But I am coaching Justin from 6 years ago. Right. So like, you knew what shutter speed was 6 years ago. You don't need that. You know what I mean? So it's like you're trying to teach a very specific thing. But yeah, like if I'm doing, 50 weddings a year and I'm charging $3,000 a month for them as a video, I mean $3,000 a wedding as a videographer or whatever, like making some decent money, I want to know exactly what you did, and I want to know why you're more successful than I am right now. So it's like if I talk to somebody about MedChoice, how do I tell them that like MedChoice, the turmeric company, is doing great? Well, I say, we launched 8 to 9 months ago and we're doing a 2 million per year run rate, right? So we're going to do $2 million this year. And we launched nine months ago. That makes people go, what did you just say? What? And they're just like, wait a second, that's insane. And I'm like, yeah. And I can tell you step by step how I did that. If I just say like, oh yeah, MedChoice is really successful. I got some monthly cash flow coming in and it feels great. Why are they excited about that? Because we haven't defined what crushing it is,
Yeah. So that's actually awesome, by the way. Congratulations. So you have a few of those too, right? So you have Clovis, you have MedChoice. Clovis is part of like, it's not just a supplement, but it's also kind of you work one-on-one with people, right? And you kind of have like a whole audience that you're helping. But that you do all that for free, right? That's kind of like you help all these people and you kind of get them into the program and then they have the choice to kind of buy the supplement.
Yeah, it's basically there's three different things you can do with Clovis. There's the collagen superfood, there is an electrolyte supplement, and then there are custom nutrition plans, which is the lifestyle product. That's $99. And there's a 22 question quiz. So I hired developers and built all this stuff out. So you answer a 22 question quiz that's like an in-depth questionnaire on your health and wellness. And then we create a custom nutrition plan for you to follow for the next 30 days or the rest of your life, however long you want to follow it for. And that's where all the client success comes from. It's like the customized nutrition. I built all those algorithms, like the way that we calculate your fat, protein, carbs, calories, all that. People are like, how'd you come up with this? I'm like, with the Casio calculator in my office, because I didn't like most programs out there. They're nonsense. These people just don't understand biochemistry. So I just created my own system, and I basically made like an AI version of my brain is what those custom plans are. And you can go to imclovis.com/start, pay $99 and get that immediately. Like you get your custom nutrition plan. To work with me one-on-one is a far more expensive thing, what we call a high ticket item, because you get access to me from a walkie-talkie app in my phone. You can like ping me whenever you want type thing. Those are private one-on-one clients. I only do 5 per month, but it's basically the custom nutrition plan, the collagen superfood, and the electrolytes. And that's it. Now, over the next 12 months, I'm launching a vitamin D3 plus K2 supplement. I'm going to launch a probiotic and omega-3. So I'm going to make a lot more physical products, but that's really the core of Clovis. People come in for the custom nutrition plan. That changes their life, gets them going on this lifestyle type thing. Then they listen to some podcasts, and the podcast really does a lot of the heavy lifting for me too, because I've covered every single topic under the sun, from fat loss to depression to exercise, autoimmune conditions, and everything in between. This might be worth touching on too, is like the autonomy and freedom thing. Like I own a house in Nashville, and that's would be considered my primary residence. But I have a management team that takes care of it for me, and it's rented out basically 100% of the time on Airbnb, even through the pandemic. Like I stayed there for most of the months of the pandemic, but as soon as I left in October, we got rentals again. And now like that cash flows me, God, it like quadruples my mortgage, So it's like, it's paying my mortgage and paying whatever I'm doing out here. And then I have some savings, I have some cryptocurrency and all that. And then, so it's just like, it's not really not that difficult, like to live. You can live a lot of places outside of the US for like way less money than you would inside the US. Another beauty that I like of like the nomadic kind of travel thing is I don't have to sign leases. It's like everywhere you go in a major city in the US, like you're lucky to get a 6-month lease. They're probably going to want a 12-month lease with first and last month's rent. And they just lock you in a way that I'm just not comfortable with, man. So now I have my house in Nashville. Let's say in May, I want to be there for all of May. I just ping my Airbnb manager and I say, block off the calendar. I'm coming home. And that's it.
How like I don't know, there's so many things here, but how did you get? I remember when you first moved to Nashville. It was before people I feel like were really migrating to Nashville. And then I heard like there's like X amount of people like moving there per day, and it was kind of a crazy number. And real estate, when you had moved out, I was probably looking a few years after and kind of like talking about it with my dad because I had thought about moving down there as well. And he's always looking for property. And I remember like a brand new build out there was like $100,000. And I remember you picked up a house super cheap. It was like $25K or $35K. And you're just like scooping up real estate, like kind of along the way.
Yeah, that's the answer to why my whole family's there. We both grew up in the same place in Rhode Island. My whole family is in Nashville because real estate. I think between my whole family, we bought like eight properties or something like that. Because when I was 25, I'm 34 now, so 9 years ago, I bought my first house there. Was a foreclosure. It was $60,000 total, and because I did an FHA loan, first time buyer, my down payment was $1,000. My mortgage was $475 a month. So I put a roommate in there who paid me $500 a month. So, and I had to live there for the first 2 years because it was an owner occupied stipulation. So I lived there for 2 years with him paying my full mortgage. Then I bought a second house 2 years later, the one I have now, and put a tenant in that house for $1,100 a month. And keep in mind, my mortgage was $475 a month. So now that's cash flowing me. And then 7 years later, I sold that $60,000 investment. That my entire investment was $1,000. I never made a single mortgage payment on that thing myself out of pocket ever. And I sold it for $218,500.
Wow.
Like at the time I sold it, I think I owed $33,000 on it. And now same with my house I have right now. I think there's over $200K in equity in that already. Like the mortgage is like $800. And like this past month, In March to just shy of 3K in Airbnb income.
Wow. And you've just found someone that like manages the Airbnb. So it's like you're not stressing about like, oh, I got to get a filter, I got to get a cleaning service. You're not thinking
They just
about
take
it.
a percentage. I've never talked to a guest. I've never scheduled a cleaning, nothing. They created the listing. They did everything, hands off.
How do you find these people? Do they just exist, or like you get
Oh
lucky?
yeah. No, there are big ones that exist. Like Turnkey is a big one. There's so many. Most Airbnb owners at this point, I think, don't manage their own properties. Like my dad and my brother own two of the biggest Airbnbs in the city of Nashville. They're right downtown in a place called the Gulch, and yeah, so they have a Turnkey. I think is theirs. I think they take 18%. I found like a scrappy entrepreneur girl I know named Allie who started her own cleaning company, and then decided she's like, I think I could manage property. So I kind of like helped her with that. Like I helped her with entrepreneurship a little bit. And now like, you know, she loves me and I love her and everything's great. And I know her whole team and I text people when I need something and, you know, it's great. Like I have a home warranty on the house. So when something breaks, they are my go-to person. They call the home warranty company and the new stove goes in or whatever. It's like so hands off for me. It's insane. And then they just share the calendar with me. So I can look at the calendar and be like, oh, there's 2 weeks open in May. I'm going to come home and chill, block those dates off. You know what I mean?
So what's your like total like in passive income? What are you kind of collecting like, across the board where you're like, hey, I don't even touch these things?
Yeah, I mean, so across the board, let's see. I mean, the 25% of Med Choice is depending on the month, it's going to be it can swing wildly. So Med Choice could be like, 5 to 15K a month, depending on like what is happening with Med Choice, or like sometimes we'll like run out of inventory and then that really dings you on the search results on Amazon. Inventory is a huge problem for Amazon. Like if you don't have full stock inventory, they'll pull you out of search results and stuff. So there's that. Clovis, believe it or not, I pay myself zero. So I tell people I don't need it right now, and I'm really trying to scale the company in a big way.
So you just
So I
kind of
really,
invest that back in.
yeah, I put everything back into the company. Yeah, so like even like freelancers that work for Clovis, there's a lot. I got like 8 freelancers right now. They make more money off Clovis than I do right now. I own the thing, which is great. So yeah, like the Airbnb is doing, between when it was really slow, like in October when COVID was still kind of a thing, it was like 1,600 a month. And then a really great month is $3,000 a month. And then Med Choice is, obviously awesome monthly cash flow. And then you have the fasting app. I am just a very, very small minority owner in that and a profit share. That's a very small amount until we scale and profitability. So that one, it's like, that's a long-term play for me. That's kind of sitting over here. But the biggest thing about it, man, is just that I situate myself in a way where like, if I have 3 to 5 grand a month, there's not a whole lot I can't do. You know what I mean? So it's this kind of, like Ramit Sethi has a book called I Will Teach You to Be Rich. And I disagree with a lot of it because he's like just all in on 401ks. And I think that's ludicrous. But he does this thing where it's like, it's less about what the monthly cash flow is. It's more about what your rich life is, quote unquote, rich life. And he gives an example. There's one guy in the book who budgets $60,000 a year in New York City just for alcohol, like to go out drinking because he loves being part of that nightlife. And some people are, oh my God, this is a waste of money. And you're like, no, if the guy makes 200K a year and that makes him happy spending his money on that, then that's great, right? So I've set my life up in a way my living expenses are so low that I don't need an astronomical amount of cash flow. Now ideally, I mean, I'll be straight up with you, like between the fasting app and Med Choice and Clovis, I want to have 6 figures a month in passive income. That's what I'd like to get to, literally. So I probably won't stop until I get there. I have a couple other companies I'm thinking about launching right now that I think would be really cool. And then it's just like small investments and stuff. Like I'm involved in cryptocurrency and those kinds of things.
Yeah. So your main focus is like, hey, and I think that's kind of what like the Wealth Factory kind of teaches, is just like find out what it is that kind of makes you happy. Figure out your bottom line for your like monthly expenses, like what you need to be putting away. And then how to cash flow that lifestyle.
Yes.
Yeah, that's kind of what it seemed. And I had read the 4 Hour Work Week too. I started to. It was recommended to me by another guy I had on the podcast. He's more like a business consultant, really smart dude. And he's like, yeah, you got to read this book. And I started reading it, and I was like, man, this guy's only working 4 hours a week. I was like, I like to work. So that was my whole like turn off by that book. I was like, I really like being productive, I guess, Yeah.
I think this is important though. You touched on something important. So I think everybody should read the 4 Hour Work Week. It was written in 2007 and like still holds up. The thing that I want to be clear about with that is he's saying you can get to a point where your systems are so passive that you can check in on them for 4 hours a week. Like Clovis, I was working 16-hour days. Like when I launched Clovis, it was insane. The amount of work I did was nuts. I mean, and when I wasn't working, I was reading about books to make me better at
Which I don't
business.
know how you did that. Like, I think you were like cutting up video content, you were recording the podcast, you were setting things up, like, plus the amount of time that you had to invest. I'm sure like knowledge base and studying was crazy.
Yeah. So what I did was I took a giant pay cut because, I was doing pretty well as a dueling piano player. Like I was making over six figures and I was in my, mid to late 20s. And like I said, I had a 401k and health benefits and all that stuff, which is crazy for a musician to have. So I took it to the point where I just told Big Bang, like my full-time gig, I was like, I'm only going to work Fridays and Saturdays and that's it. So instead of doing, 4 to 6 gigs a week, I did 2 gigs a week. So I was really at Big Bang for like a grand total of like 6 hours a week. And the rest of my time was Clovis, 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 Clovis. That was it. I literally just lived Clovis.
Um, and now you have people kind of cutting that stuff up. You had mentioned like a developer, kind of formulating that AI, kind of how you would break out people's macros and things like that, develop their plans. How do you find these people?
Yeah, so this is really cool. This was life-changing for me. When I really dug into the world of what we call VAs, just virtual assistants and freelancers, it was huge for me. One of my favorite websites is FreeUp, F-R-E-E-E, there's 3 E's, up.com. I know the founder of that company, so I met him really early on. I think he sold the company for like 8 figures. He did really well. Upwork.com is another one. Fiverr is a really popular one, but that's really kind of like low quality. There's
Really?
hit or miss there.
Okay.
Yeah. It's like for really simple tasks. I use Fiverr for really, really simple tasks. And then there's another one called onlinejobs.ph. And that is a site that only features freelancers in the Philippines. I have had the best luck, hands down, across the world with freelancers in the Philippines. They are like astronomically, they're equally as qualified as American freelancers for a fifth of the price. And they're so happy to work because the US dollar that you're giving them is so strong over there. So you're not taking advantage of these people. Like you're getting them rich. You know what I mean? Like you can make them $10 an hour. These people are like, oh my God. It's crazy. And I mean, anything. Like I joke about this. I got pulled over. I had a reckless driving charge for going way too fast in Boulder, Colorado. And I had to kind of negotiate this with the judge. So I had to do an online safety course that was like an 8-hour course, and then you got to take a final exam. You have to get at least an 80% on the final exam. So I found a freelancer in the Philippines that was fluent in English, and I paid her $6 an hour, and she took the whole course for me, and she got an 82 on the test, and I gave it to the judge, and all was well. Like you can hire freelancers for anything you want, anything under the sun. So now you're right. I did everything myself. I edited the podcast. When you hear my podcast, there's a music intro and all that. I did all that stuff myself. Like I did every single thing with Clovis I did by myself. Podcast, audio, video, pictures, everything. And then I finally got to a point now where I can hire all that stuff out. So I really only have 2 employees with Clovis. I have my CMO, and then I have basically my assistant, kind of catch-all assistant named Jackie. And then the rest is freelancers. I hire virtual assistants.
And a virtual assistant, like there are things like I'm thinking like, oh, it'd be great to be able to delegate, some aspect of the wedding, and we have too. Like we have done like some video, outsource some like video editing. It's just like $250 for a video. I'm like, that's crazy cheap. I don't know how they're like able to do this, but it makes sense with what you're saying. But like tasks where it's just like customer service, you're FaceTiming with the client or like you're emailing with the client. Would you recommend it for that as well?
Yeah, 100%. I mean, especially in the Philippines and Mexico, actually, for customer service, you can get full teams. I wish I knew offhand, I would give you the name of the company, but there's a team out in Mexico that will give you everything: email, phone support, like direct phone support. They speak fluent English. Like you would not know that it's not gonna frustrate your customer if you get like some person in middle America that gets mad when someone has an accent. Like that's not gonna be an issue. But I mean, full blown customer service management. I mean, you can have freelancers manage your email inbox for you, and they'll only flag the ones that really need your attention. They'll delete all your spam for you. I mean, they literally will do absolutely anything, and they're great at it.
And you don't have to worry about like what's the turnover rate with them, and then like what's like the training, like kind of like priming them like, hey, this is what we do, this is how you handle this kind of case, this is how you handle this kind of case. If you have something that has like a lot of steps, like we had a lot of cancellations and reschedules, those are so like case by case basis, and we're like moving things over. It's like, hey, they need a new contract, the old contract has to be uploaded to Dropbox, and then you got to move this over into the sheets into the new year, and you got to line up these shooters. So things like that kind of require almost like you need to be ingrained in the business to know what's going on. How would you kind of translate that to someone who's really not in-house or a part of the team?
Yeah, this is called what I think they call it standard of process, like SOPs. So think about it. When you do all those things, you have to do them anyway. You're probably working on your laptop, right? So I have a program called Loom, Loom, just loom.com, and it's a screen recording software, right? So for instance, the first time I taught my assistant Jackie how to do Shopify refunds, I just sent her an email and I said, here's the login, here's how you log in, and then a link to a video. And it's me going, hey, Jackie, what's up? Here I am in the Shopify platform. Once you log into Shopify, you're going to go to the left-hand corner of the screen. You're going to click on orders. Then we'll go to the email. And they said, my order number is 1000. So search for that order, click it. Here's where you click refund, blah, 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 bam. So every single thing that I've ever wanted taken off of my plate, I do the task once, I create a screen recording, and I give it to a freelancer. And then they can do it forever.
And the turnover rate, like, is it they're on with you for a couple of years, or are they like off finding new work?
Yeah, well, they're it depends. So you can grab them full time, right? So there's some people that I pay like, let's say $8 to $10 an hour. But if I hire them full time, they need $500 a month. They're like, yeah, $500 a month, I'm full time with you. And you're like, what, really? Okay. Like that sounds amazing. So I've hired some full-time people. I've hired some part-time people. They'll stay as long as you're giving them work, and they will tell you what price they need to not have any other work and only have you. Now, if you just want to pay them by the hour, they're going to have different projects going on and everything. But it's crazy. Like I have 115 blog posts that had Facebook embed videos. And then I hired this SEO team that was like, hey, those should be YouTube videos. So I needed to pull all those 115 Facebook videos, upload them to YouTube, grab the embed codes, change the embed code in all 115 blog posts, and then put that in a Google spreadsheet with links to the new thing and blah, 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 blah. So I hired this freelancer and it was done in like 2 days. I'm like, what? Like that would have taken me just like forever, and it's so tedious. But yeah, if you're giving them work, they'll stay with you. Now, the one warning I will give is like, I had the dopest video ever edited. I'm telling you, man, you can find people in the Philippines that like they could make full production music videos, and like they're going to charge you $15 an hour. It's outrageous, right? They just like the US dollar. And I had one guy that was doing all my social media videos, all the clips with the headlines and captions and progress bar and all those things I pushed out on Instagram. And he disappeared one day. He disappeared and I couldn't get in touch with him. And then he hit me up like 8 months later and was like, hey, do you have any work for me? And I was like, interesting. But that's really one time that's happened to me.
Yeah. What was that website?
So the one that's strictly people in the Philippines, it's going to charge you, I think it's like $70 a month to be on that platform, but it's onlinejobs.ph. So there's no .com or anything, just literally onlinejobs.ph. And everyone, you post a job in there and you're going to get a ton of people are going to submit their resumes and everything. And you can see their work online. Like that video guy, he sent me, I mean, like full blown. He was doing like promo trailers for like tourist spots and resorts and stuff. I was like, this is insane. I couldn't believe this guy. I was like, how much would you charge me for an Instagram video? He's like, $5. I was like, okay. So I'd send him 40 Instagram videos at a time, you know?
Wow. Yeah, that's because some of these tasks, like these one-off tasks, where it's like even doing this podcast, like now we want to like cut it up into, create content for Instagram, kind of maybe even like build out the website, build out the YouTube channel, create all that stuff. I'm probably not going to give that to my editor who's producing all the wedding films. Like she's just too bogged down, It probably wouldn't be a good use of her time. But yeah, that's great to know.
That's the biggest thing, man, is you have to look at the opportunity cost of it, right? Because it's like there's so many people that kind of say what you said is like, if you're in the business, you don't really know how to get it. But that's not true. Like it's if you can give instructions correctly one time, every time you make one Loom video, that's a task off your plate. You know what I mean? So it's and really people can come in blind and do that. Like we do this thing where it's like the system seems so complicated and it's real, but that's really just like your brain wants to keep its hands on the reins, to be honest. That's what it is. Like for you to scale your company the way that you want to scale it, I can tell you the move right now is just hire a CEO, pay him 6 figures a year and step out, go on vacation. You know what I mean? Like it really is that simple. It's like you could hand it off to somebody, or you say like, hey, I want to hire you as a CEO. I'm going to set KPIs. I want you to double revenue in the first year that you're with us or you're gone. And by the way, if you double revenue, I'll give you 5% equity in the company. So you have an investing equity deal or whatever. Like you can make any company hands off. When I first got involved with Wealth Factory, this is why my dad now owns FedEx routes. They recommended a book called Buy Then Build. If you have any kind of capital laying around and you don't want to learn how to be an entrepreneur, buy a company that already exists. People offer to buy Clovis all the time. I just get emails from people that are like, I want to buy your e-commerce brand, and it's usually at a multiplier. Like they'll take your yearly revenue, and depending on the industry you're in, they'll multiply that by a specific number, and they'll offer you that amount of money. So it's like you could do the same thing. I mean, you could bring in a CEO who wants an equity deal plus salary, or someone who just wants an equity deal. Like I just made this arrangement that I have with my CMO is just vesting equity. He's on an equity schedule, so he's gonna, when he hits these KPIs, and I set outrageous KPIs for this dude, but he's super confident in what he's done. He's run multi-million-dollar companies already. Like he's 27 years old. He's brilliant. I want him on board, so I'm like, yeah, dude, I'm going to vest it this way. There's 3 different vesting schedules. If you hit this KPI, you get this much percent. You hit this KPI, you get that much percent. And he's confident he's going to crush it. So he's like, yeah, I want to own a percentage of Clovis and hopefully eventually sell Clovis for 8 figures. He sees the value and his monthly cash flow's good. He owns an agency. He's doing well by himself. So now he's looking for these opportunities, these long-term plays. He can come in, adjust some things, scale the company, and then get a part of that payout down the line,
So what are your KPI like metrics set to? Like, is it all based off growth or like growth in automation?
Yeah, kind of. So projections are a funny thing, right? So I really think that people think there's like some kind of formula or algorithm to projections, kind of, but you're really pulling them out of thin air. Especially like, so I launched the superfood and electrolytes this year. Those are 2 products I've never sold before. So how do I make projections? I have no history. I don't know how well these things are going to sell. I have no idea. So I literally just pull the projections out of thin air. So this guy's operating on projections that I pulled out of thin air. And that's what everybody does. That's like the big scary secret is like people think that, entrepreneurs are rocket scientists sitting down with these detailed calculations or whatever. It's like, no, it's like, I want to make $5 million this year. That's, I want to make 5 million this year. So I set my projections are at like, I think like 7 for 2021. Right. And I set KPIs for this situation. Like the vesting schedule that we have for this guy does not happen if I don't see 5 million in revenue.
Right.
So where's the risk for me,
Right. Does he have like a salary as well? It's like some kind of thing keeping him going.
Not in my deal. Now, most people would probably want that, but he's involved in multiple companies. He owns his own agency that's quite passive for him. So like his monthly cash flow is handled. This is an entrepreneur who's done very, very well and young as hell, has done very well, but has never done projects that he's been passionate about. Clovis, he's very passionate about. He's following the Clovis nutrition. I'm in charge of his fitness. I made him custom plan. I did all these things. He's taken the supplements. He believes in this thing the way that I believe in this thing. So I got really lucky. I met this amazing person, just, synchronicities, and he really wants to be involved with Clovis and is passionate about it. For most people, like with your, with Move Mountains, or I don't know if that's the name of the photography video company, but yeah, if you hired a CEO, they'd probably want a salary plus some kind of equity play. But again, like if I salaried him, I'd make his equity much lower, so it's kind of a lever.
Right. Yeah, I think that's like, there's something to be said of that. And I feel like if Move Mountains wasn't mine, I feel like I would be more detached, where like it would almost feel like I'd probably delegate things faster, I'd be more willing to like you said, like let the reins out a little bit. And we probably scale faster that way. I think holding on is, and I get to give myself some credit because it's just like, and I feel like every time I've let go of something, it was because my back was against the wall and I had to. So it's not like I let go, like the reins were kind of pulled out of my hands. I had no other option. Yeah. And it was great. It always works out. I mean, it's gone south a couple times as well, but for the most part, and it is liberating. And I've been thinking about that, even this morning. It's like my mind is so almost like OCD in a way, where it's just like, where it's like it needs to have control, and it's like if we are gonna automate something, or it's like it's got to be perfect before it gets to market. Like even these how we do it, and like last year again, like back was up against the wall. We had made these how we do it, but it was like the first draft, so it was a PDF with like screenshots and like I just typed out need to get this type of shot under these kind of lighting standards, and it's just like we called it the makeshift how we do it. And we would just like text that to like people because we just needed shooters. That was more like 2019. So now we're trying to make a more refined version of that. But I think, yeah, kind of like holding on too tightly to something, you kind of like, sometimes it's like you're standing in your own way, because you're unwilling to kind of like give something up or take a chance, because it's like, I think it's that fear of failure too, where it's just like, if I give it to somebody, they don't, they could drop the ball with it, or it could not be as good. At least if I'm the one holding on to it, I'm the one doing it. If we fail, it's just like, it kind of failed on me. It's hard to watch someone else, drop the ball.
Yeah, there's always a risk of someone dropping the ball, but I mean, you be very selective, and you can make any deal that you want. It's the same as relationships, right? Like you could be in a non-monogamous relationship that's like you're allowed to kiss someone else on the cheek, and that's all you're allowed to do, and everything else is off the table. And you're like, okay, like you can make whatever designer relationship you want. You can make whatever designer business relationships that you want. Like with me, I set absurd KPIs, right? And this person agreed to them. Cool. If he didn't agree to them, I don't have to agree to them. I didn't have to let the reins over. But I also realized that he scaled companies in the millions. I have not. So I'm like, okay, like, I mean, MedChoice now, but that's run by an agency. That's passive for me. So I'm looking at me as the CEO. So I was playing the role of CEO and CMO and everything else in between, right? So now I'm going, okay, if I want to scale with paid traffic, again, opportunity cost, I'm going to go have to do a deep dive, masterclass level exploration of Facebook ads, and Google ads, and Instagram ads, and all these things. Or Clovis is doing well. I have cash flow, and it's an attractive company equity wise. So why would I not go get an expert that has already done this? Even if you don't want an equity partner or a CMO or something, I don't think people realize, like, just go on LinkedIn, search for someone that's done something that you want to do, and be like, I'm going to pay you $1,000 an hour for your consulting, right? So if you have a guy that scaled his video company from 5 million to 25 million, and you're like, I want to talk to that dude, and I want to talk to him for 3 hours, save $3,000 and give the guy 3 hours for an outrageous consulting price, and you're going to learn a lot of like absolute gold in that time. So I always try to go to people who are experts in the thing. Like I'm an expert at content creation. Like sometimes people will hire me like for coaching, and it's like it goes from nutrition to like teaching them how to be an influencer. I'm an expert at that. I can teach you like the Gary Vee content model, how to make podcasts, how to do videos, how to edit them, how to hire freelancers. I know all these things, and I'm an expert in nutrition. If you want to learn about nutrition, I think I can break down nutrition for you better than most people in the world, because I'm not an academic. I self-taught myself everything, which is why I can come up with analogies like if you're walking through the forest, you're never going to stumble upon a bagel tree. Whereas like the biochemist is going to be like, well, when you eat gluten, it is technically a lectin protein that activates zonulin in the gut. And the person's like, what are you talking about? I don't know. Or I go, no bagel trees. I go, oh, I get it. So you want to find the people that are just experts in what they do and bring them in to help you do what it is that you're trying to do. You want to do what they did, just ask them how they did it. That's when it makes sense to let your hands off the reins. And in the beginning, I couldn't let my hands off the reins because I didn't have capital. I didn't have the money. That the Clovis wasn't making enough money for me to go hire people. That's what I learned about the Gary Vee content model. Anyone who's absorbing Gary Vee's content regularly, you have to understand everything he's putting out public, front facing, is for people with no money and no current following. That's why he's like, make 8 podcasts a week and do everything for free and say yes to everything and blah, blah, blah. No. Once you're doing over $250,000 a year, like that shit is going to work directly against you. You're going to say yes to too many things. You're going to do way too much stuff for free. You need to graduate beyond that very quickly and start charging,
When you say you set these like crazy KPIs, like what are some like KPIs that you set for this guy?
Yeah, that was the big one. His vesting schedule is based on, I think 2.5 million and then 5 million, which would be like 4x, like over 4x growth in this year, like it'd be crazy. Like the KPIs are substantial.
So KPIs, you don't map how to get there. You say, here's where I want to go. You figure out how we get there. And then it's whether you hit it or not.
Yeah, kind of. I mean, I set all the projections. I set all the financial projections for sure. So we have this like really detailed, what he calls a pro forma, I think is the term he uses. It's this advanced Google spreadsheet with like multiple tabs and everything. That's all these different calculations of like all of our monthly expenses are in there. Like any salaried employees are in there. Like everything down to the detail from like, this is, PayPal charges 2.75% and 30% of our custom plans are coming from PayPal. So that expense is in there. It's just like really, really detailed expense spreadsheets and projection spreadsheets. But it's still guesswork. The expenses are real. The expenses are there and real. And then we just set whatever growth rate we want to hit and spell out those projections over the next 12 months. And you can make them as pie in the sky as you want to, but you have to believe it. You have to believe you could do it. In my opinion, that's the thing. Like if you're making 100K this year, like don't set your projections at $10 million. You're just going to disappoint yourself,
Right. But you gave him these and it was like encouraging. He's like, okay, like it was high enough where it's just like, this is something it's going to be challenging, but it's still achievable.
Exactly. Still achievable, and not only challenging, but challenging enough for him to be excited. People who are really good at what they do, they want to be like, I can do that. They want to be stretched outside their comfort zone.
Right. Yeah. That's rad, man. Cool. Well, I'd love to get you on as a consulting guy. When we do that, when we're launching this YouTube thing, I feel like that could be really helpful. Like, getting the right people in the right places. Our goal is to start like basically an academy, call it MMC Academy, and kind of do like consulting through it, courses, and maybe even like workshops. And just like this year, like as we're going out, we're treating like every wedding as like an opportunity, like a learning opportunity. So we're going to like bring like a behind the scenes camera, and, especially like if I'm going out to shoot, it's just like, I want to like be filming and documenting like, hey, this is how I shoot the dress. This is how I shoot this. This is why I do this. This is why I'm making this decision. And just like create content. So now it's like, okay, we have all that content. Now we need, to get that content dispersed, get it in the system, have like, where does it go without like disrupting our actual production schedule. So kind of like formulating that would be great to actually sit down with you and go through.
Dude,
that.
I would love to do that. Yeah. And this is for your listeners too. There's a great book called Meant for More. And Meant for More is like arguably a little bit there's a little bit of woo-woo to it. It's basically like they're saying that you're gonna find your purpose, and it's like kind of this concept called purpose-driven profit, so like how you can profit on like the person that's on YouTube reviewing peanut butter because they love peanut butter and they make 80 grand a year and they're super healthy. They're super happy and content. But yeah, it's the same thing for you. That basically it's her whole book teaching you how to sell a very, very high ticket course. So from what I know of your company, man, it's great that I think you want to make YouTube content and put all that stuff out there. I would be crushing paid traffic if I were you. You don't like I said, you don't need to go the Gary Vee route and just be super consistent. I mean, you still be consistent, do like, a video a week or 2 videos a week or something like that. But like run traffic to that stuff for sure. And like have landing pages and like, I would get your course set up as quickly as possible on something like Kajabi or Teachable or something like that. Like build the course out, get some freelancers to make like some ClickFunnels landing pages for you and run traffic, dude, because your company is profitable, right? Skip it. Skip all the parts that profitable companies don't get to do that. I couldn't run paid traffic. I couldn't hire people on salary. I didn't have any money. Like your company is already doing well. So you can skip a lot of the steps of scaling for sure.
So just get the product there and then just do paid traffic to it, essentially.
Yeah. If I were you, I would get an incredible product built out. And then I wouldn't go with an agency. I would try to find like one single individual that's just an expert at Facebook ads. And Free Up is probably the way to go. Like that particular platform of Free Up to find someone that's really good at Facebook ads. I would do that and literally just make like one funnel. Like try to determine who your customer avatar is and just have one funnel that leads people to your, $5,000 online course. I'm just making that number up, but like $5,000 online course or whatever it is, and like sell 10 of those a month and tell me how you're doing. It's great.
Yeah. So Free Up, what could you expect to pay for like a Facebook, having someone run that?
I don't actually know what you're going to end up paying for a Facebook ads manager because I've never personally done that myself. Now, I have hired a lot of agencies and I've never been happy. I've never been happy with an agency. I don't think I'll ever hire an agency again. That's why I was willing to give up equity for an actual CMO. Sorry if that music's loud. But yeah, so I wanted a CMO, someone that has skin in the game. And I also wanted the equity play because he has skin in the game. If my company doesn't crush, he makes nothing, But agencies, man, I tried working with agencies. I worked with one agency for 3 months. They charged me $5,000 a month just to manage ads and we're barely profitable. It's just like agencies have not been good for me. I would try to find like one expert individual. But on Free Up, I mean, another move might be to try to convince the freelancer to go full time with you, just see what full time cost is. Because if you get someone that's really good at Facebook ads, like you might be looking at $50 an hour, right? But you might be able to say, hey, can I bring you on board for full time? And they might be like, yeah, I need $3,000 a month and I'm going to work for you all day, every day. It's a better deal. Do that,
And do you always get results? Is it just like, X amount of dollars is going to produce X amount of results?
Well, this is up to you again. So I'm very unreasonable about this. Like my CMO knows this. Like if you run me Facebook ads that are returning less than $2 for every $1 spent, I don't want to work with you. And you'll get these agencies that come in, they're like, well, we've been at it for 3 months and we're giving you a 1.12 return on ad spend, which is ROAS, right? So they're making you're making 12% for every dollar spent, you're making $1.12. And I'm like, no, you're going to 2 to 4x all of my dollars or you're fired. And some people might say that's unreasonable. Well, tough, then find somebody who's willing to do it.
Yeah, we've worked with 2 different people running, or actually 3 people now, and I feel like it's never really been lucrative. Yeah. I don't know why, but and it's Facebook ads is like something that we probably could do ourselves, but have never like explored it, and it seems like a whole system that like you really got to learn. Where it's just like it's not something like there are things that I'm like I want to learn, I'm willing to learn, and Facebook ads is just like not one of those things.
That's exactly how I felt about it, man. I mean, you're better off just getting somebody that like your company is big enough, and these numbers that you're talking about, man. Like I know you're not charging $500 a wedding, so if you're doing 215 weddings, like it sounds like you're doing great. I don't know what your exact profit margin is, but like that's probably attractive to somebody. I think like you're an ideal candidate, especially if you're feeling burnout, right? Like if you're feeling burnout in any way, then you're an ideal candidate for at least bringing on a CMO that's going to handle the marketing side of things for you. Maybe you still stay in like the everyday logistics of the company. But if you don't want to learn marketing, don't. Your company is attractive. Like you're making money, dude. So there's people out there that are going to want to work with you.
Yeah. Yeah. How do you find a CMO?
Well, CMO you could do probably LinkedIn would be the way to go. Just trying to find somebody who's done this with some kind of photography/video company. Another thing you could do is like that guy that's selling courses, right? I'm a big fan of networking. So like that guy that's selling the course that talks about shutter speed and everything, like try to get him on your podcast and talk to him and then see if he knows how he did it, how he did his whole system. Like if he's really killing on the business side of things, his target audience is different than yours, first of all. So he's probably not going to see you as competition. And you can just ask him how he did that,
Okay. Yeah,
just find someone that's already doing it and just reach out. It's like, it's not like, because these people aren't going to be like, hey, I posted a job in Craigslist that I'm trying to be a CMO for a startup. Like that's not how that works. You're probably going to poach a CMO from somebody else, to be honest. You'll find some CMO that's killing the game in something else. And it doesn't necessarily have to be photography or video either. You can just find a really good CMO for some company whose marketing impresses you,
Yeah. Yeah, I never thought to reach out to that guy. There was one guy I reached out to lately to be on the podcast. It was funny because he's somewhere in the Midwest. He's an entrepreneur. And I was like, hey, I'd love to have you on the podcast. And I was thinking like, yeah, he probably won't respond. He's like, yeah, I'd love to. And I was like, he's like, you want to do it in person? I was like, you're going to fly here to do a podcast that like hasn't even launched yet? He's like, yeah. I was like, all right.
But yeah, podcasts are like, people love the people out of my podcast. I remember when I had Mark Bell on my podcast, like he's got like 600,000 Instagram followers, and I just got lucky because a doctor that he had on his show was a friend of mine and he was wearing a Clovis shirt. So I have these shirts that say eat whole foods, change the world. So I'm listening to Mark Bell's podcast and there's my buddy Paul is on there. And Mark's like, tell me about that shirt. That's a cool shirt. He's like, yeah, my buddy Justin owns Clovis and it says eat whole foods, change the world. So I just like got a bunch of those t-shirts and shipped them to Mark and then hit him up on Instagram, was like, yeah, my buddy wore my shirt on your show, the Eat Whole Foods Change the World. And he was like, oh, cool, man. I was like, you want to come on my podcast? He was like, yes. Boom. So it's like, just don't be afraid. They're normal people,
Yeah. Back to, because like your main thing is like health and fitness and that kind of thing. I did a fast back in January. I was just doing green juices. It was like fruit and vegetables, and I did it. I think it was like 2-3 weeks, and I just had like the best. I wasn't groggy in the morning waking up. I didn't need as much sleep. Ton of ideas. Like my brain was just like running at like a higher capacity. And I was like, all right, this isn't sustainable. I just can't like juice the rest of my life. What do you recommend for like someone who like needs a lot of brain power, needs a lot of focus, like has a lot of stress, and like, running a company or something similar where they like really need to be on, like what kind of things would you regiment for someone like that to kind of be able to crush it, stay focused, stay on point, not have those sluggish days? And I'm sure some of it is probably just like resting too, but what are your thoughts on it?
Yeah. Sleep is huge. Sleep is like a core pillar, man. Like you got to be sleeping 7 to 8 hours a night for sure. Don't be looking at screens before bed or anything like that. It's just terrible for you. I'm a big fan of blue blockers. People wear like those crazy red blue blockers if they have to look at screens at night. Sleep is huge for sure. But honestly, And I would say somewhere between probably 90 to 95% of the benefit that you saw from that juice fast, you would get doing everything that I explained to you, species appropriate fasted exercise. I assure you. It's just, that's the thing. Like, people don't realize they're just like shoving stuff in their system from the moment they wake up, and then they're watching Netflix at night with a blue light in their face. And that's usually when they're eating ice cream or snacking on some Oreos or something like that. And they're maybe fasting 9 hours a day. So it's just, they're like in a constant fed state. So the digestive system is going. Like, think about it. The body, there's something called like triage theory. Like in a hospital, if someone has a bullet wound to the chest and someone has a splinter, you take in the person with the bullet wound to the chest first. But the body only has finite resources, so it's sending blood flow to different places. Like if you're getting chased by a lion, the body's going to send all your blood flow to your legs so that you can run away, and you're going to dump glycogen, and it's going to spike your adrenaline and make you do the thing to run away from the lion, right? Well, think about it. If you're digesting food 100% of the time, that's just constant resources that have to go to this digestion of food. This is why fasting gives people like such tremendous brain power, because the system's just not bogged down by having to do all the basic maintenance shit. And then from there, if you eventually tap into a fat burning state, that's when you start burning ketones, which people call ketosis. So you enter nutritional ketosis, and ketones are a far superior energy source for creating ATP, and you get this mental clarity and all these things. But ultimately, man, it's like this is all, so many people skip the basics, species appropriate fasted exercise, and they try to optimize. So they're like, I'm an entrepreneur, and Dave Asprey drinks MCT oil and butter in his coffee. So like, I'm going to do a bunch of bulletproof coffee because that's going to help my brain power. But then they like still eat the bagel at breakfast. And I'm like, no. You have to get the core foundations down first. And these fasts and everything make people feel fantastic, because the juice did nothing for you. The juice did nothing for you. The vegetables did nothing for you. That is a marketing gimmick. And you just fasted. The fasting did the thing. What you did is called a fasting mimicking diet. It's just extreme caloric restriction, right? You didn't have to digest any proteins or fats or anything like that. You just gave the body a break. You would have got the same benefits for sure on just a water fast, or even if you just drank water and black coffee. Like I've done, 5-day fasts where I just drink water and black coffee, and I still exercise, I lift weights, do all the things. Like, fasting is pretty incredible, but you can't do it forever. So get that core foundation down first. Like, if the foundation you're building off of is that like species appropriate fasted exercise, you're going to crush, man. And that's why when you do that, you don't need to count macros and count calories and all those things. Eat foods that exist in nature, fast for 12 hours a day, and go for a walk every day fasted. Tremendous results.
All right, so last thing, we have one of our interns here. She's running the cameras. I was thinking we could bring her on for a second and maybe just give her some advice. She's graduating high school this year. Steph, are you okay with this? Yeah. Give her like some advice. She's like, she's been doing this internship for a year. So yeah, why don't you come say hello to Justin?
Hello. Hi.
Hello.
Hi, nice to meet you.
Yeah, nice to meet you too. Thanks for doing this. It's a cool idea. I like it. Like what it is you like. Do you want to run a company like Sean's running a company? Like, do you have specific things you want to do?
Well, I haven't thought as far as running a company yet. I do know that I want to pursue photography in the company, maybe start off from there. But yeah, I want to get better at setting goals, because that's like something I'm not the greatest at. So hearing you guys talk about this is like very like crazy to me, because it sounds so like there's so much work to be put into it.
We're
yeah.
going through these questions, and I'm like looking at her face. I'm like, I wonder what she's like.
No, yeah, it's super interesting, because it's like it sounds so crazy, and like, yeah, I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, the few things that I would focus on if I were you, like coming out of this right now, is like, so you're just coming out of high school. The tricky thing about like, I'm not really a higher education guy, and I know that that's like not always popular, but I mean, just the amount of money that you spend on higher education, academia, all those things, and what they teach is usually like way behind the bell curve. So for instance, when I had people that come out of college they had a marketing degree, they come out of school knowing none of the things that I know. And that's just the way that the curriculums are set up. Because if you're making books and textbooks and all these things and teaching people things, like that system's always going to be behind the curve. So the best thing that I would say to do is what I call wisdom through experience. You just need to go work, right? So you're obviously doing work with Move Mountains right now. This would be a good place for you when we talk about all these freelancer options like Fiverr and Upwork and FreeUp. Those would be great for you to go to. Like, I can actually do an email intro with you with the founder of FreeUp, Free Up is a good one because they have a double interview process. So they make sure that their freelancers are the best of the best, where like Fiverr is kind of a free for all. But I mean, there are like, people your age that are writing like blog posts, doing ghostwriting and things like that, and they're making 6 figures a year just on Fiverr alone, and they're like living a nomad life, traveling around and doing all these things. So if I were you, I would start building your digital resume as quickly as possible, because once you build that digital resume, and it works a lot like Amazon, so Fiverr, Upwork, Free Up, all that, you get reviewed as a freelancer. So you might have to go into these little systems and work for less money than you want to get right now. And then every time you complete a job, like I did video editing for this person, hey, can you please leave me a 5-star review? Can you write a little blurb about what you liked about my work? Next thing you know, you have like an Upwork profile with 100 5-star reviews, and you have your own standalone website that's your portfolio for video and editing and all those things. And it'd be like, it just shortcuts like the traditional thing of like climbing a corporate ladder or whatever. Just like jump ladders. There's no reason, you know what I mean? It's just like, you can get all the experience you need and just crush it. And it's like, no one has ever asked me for my songwriting degree. No one's ever asked me to see my diploma from Berkeley for me to write a song for them. So people get so hung up on this credentialed thing where like, I think your work is your credential. So I would go to work building a digital resume as quickly as possible. And if you're interested in it, doing like an influencer thing like I did, having your own Instagram channel, your own YouTube channel, like look at what Sean's doing with Move Mountains, make your own YouTube channel, make your own little how-to videos and all these things. So just like start building your online audience and start building your digital resume. And by the time you're, 25 years old, you'd be making way more money than somebody who went the traditional route, went through school and tried to do it that way.
Yeah, sometimes I feel like there's all like this wasted effort. Like you go to college and you're really just participating in like, you're hanging out with your friends, you're probably fraternizing and like partying, and all your efforts and all your energy are going into basically like listening and like participating in, projects and that kind of thing. But you could get that same experience, I feel like, in the world, like the real world, through, either just trying, like, when we started out doing, whatever it was, like trying to get gigs, like we're literally like making the music, going to the club owner, trying to get hired, going into the cafe, hey, can I make a website for you? And like learning it on your own.
Yeah, that's the thing. And like she has opportunities that we didn't have. Like we had to walk into the coffee shop and be like, can I make you a website? I mean, you can just do this online right now, It's unbelievable. Like the marketplace you have available. That's why I say like it's the craziest opportunity for wealth creation that has ever existed. And so many people are just sleeping on it. And they're sleeping on it because it feels weird to do the opposite of what everybody else is doing.
Yeah, it is true that not a lot of people think about it, because as I was hearing it, like I haven't heard of any of this, and it all sounds very daunting, and I feel like that's another reason why people don't do any of this, especially for people my age. They don't think, I feel like we don't think as big because we get scared, but I feel like if you think big and you shoot bigger than you think you could go, I feel like you'll go big either way. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Well, and here's the thing to always think about too, is it's what environment did you come up in, right? So like Sean knows this, like my dad was an entrepreneur and his company was doing $100 million a year in revenue. Like he had this giant company. So I was like, whoa, entrepreneurship seems cool. So it's this thing that a lot of people do. A lot of that scarcity mindset comes from like, let's say like your parents have never made more than 50 grand a year. And you're like, I'm going to go on Fiverr and I'm going to double what my parents make a year as an 18-year-old. The brain freaks out a little bit. And honestly, it's like, there's this thing called, I call it crabs in a bucket. There's this story about crabs in a bucket. If you put a bunch of crabs in a bucket, you don't need to put a lid on the bucket, because every time one crab tries to crawl out, the other crabs grab it and pull it down. This is what family and friends do from the towns you grew up in. Sean and I come from a very little small town, and I mean, I got a lot of weird looks when I wanted to be a musician, and a lot of weird looks when I wanted to create a protein powder. And like, wait, you have a podcast? How do you have a podcast? I don't have a podcast. Well, so it's what's around you. And what ends up happening is that a lot of these students, where you say it sounds daunting, it's not necessarily that it's not any more daunting than going to school and taking a full course load and living in a dorm and making friends and doing all these things. Like that's really daunting as well, but it's safe. It's very, very safe because that's what everybody else is doing. And you don't have to deal with opinions in that way. Every time you're at a family dinner with your aunt and your grandma and your great grandma, you get to say, yeah, I'm in college and my classes are great. And they go, oh, we're so proud of you. You're so amazing. You're in college. This is amazing. Because college once upon a time was something that you should have done. I just think that that's shifting in a tremendous way. COVID taught us that too. It's like Harvard business schools out here trying to charge 50 grand a year for you to be on Zoom calls. And people are like, no, thank you. See ya. You know, like the whole system is changing in a way that like what I'm doing, the entrepreneurship thing is going to be more acceptable going forward. So that's really it. I think it's less daunting than college, honestly. And you're fully in charge of everything that you do.
Yeah, college. I remember when everyone was signing up and going, was super daunting. Like the idea of like taking on the debt. I was like, man, it was just, and maybe like some parents like were paying for it. My dad actually offered to pay for my college too, and I was just like, I was never really that great of a student, and now that you have to pay for it, like I'm not so sure that like I feel comfortable with you paying for my lack of like interest. And I know I'm not going to perform, and it's going to be kind of a waste of money for you. So it's just like, yeah, I don't think it's such a great idea. And school was I never really liked school. I like going to school because I like hanging out with friends, and
Exactly. That's
and getting on. Like that was cool. But like school for me was a social club.
Exactly. We're taught from a young age too. Like this is more the woo-woo side of things as well, where you just don't realize how much programming is put in you, man. Like kids are taught all the time to ignore their own feelings. Like it's like, why are you crying? I'll give you something to cry about. And you're like, what the hell? I'm sad. How come you can't comfort me? So it's this weird thing of like, we're just constantly taught to suppress our emotions. So it becomes, you're 17 years old and you're talking to guidance counselors and you're talking to teachers and you're talking to your mom and dad or whatever. And it's like, if mom and dad are making 50 grand a year, the school teacher you're talking to is making 38 grand a year and telling you shouldn't do this thing. Like you need a 401k and health benefits. And I'm like, I can make your salary in a day. What are we talking about here? You know what I mean? Like, and you don't want to do that to people. I'm not saying be mean to people, but it's always consider the source. This person who's giving you advice, do you want their life? I've never met a high school teacher whose life I wanted. Never. I've never met a high school teacher whose life I want to emulate. You know what I'm saying? Like they're like, it's some 25-year-old kid who's a teacher and he's making 38 grand a year and he's like probably drinking 50 beers on the weekends with his frat boy buddies. Like, I don't want to be like that guy. Why am I going to listen to what that guy's telling me about my life? Like, don't suppress your own emotions. If you think about college and you get kind of like a, I don't know. And then you think about like, oh, I might go be a freelancer. You're like, that sounds like fun. That's kind of exciting. Maybe I should read a book about this. And you feel excited. Listen to those emotions. Go do that thing. It does not matter. You need to not care what your mom and dad think. You need to not care what your brothers and sisters and cousins and friends. You need to not care what anybody thinks. And try to listen to your own intuition, your own emotion of like, this feels good to me. This doesn't. You see what I mean?
Yeah, I remember feeling that too. You definitely get that look. So I did sign up for a community college at one point because my dad was really on me, like, you got to be going to school, So I was like, all right, we'll take a semester, we'll sign up. I think it was like $5,000 or $2,000 or something like that. And even with going to community college, it's like, hey, what are you doing? I'm going to college, CCRI. It's a bummer. It's just like, hey, and people like sympathize. You're like, oh, that's pretty good though. That's. Yeah, no,
you do get there someday. It's a stepping stone.
Yeah. No, there's nothing wrong with that. It's like, I didn't say there was.
Yeah, and then, like, what if you spent that $5,000 on like some amazing masterclass on how to start a photography video company? You might have started your company when you were 18 years old.
That's the other thing. I mean, I think I paid like $1,000 for that course. From a few. I mean, I bought a few courses at this point, and it's like, man, $1,000 seems like a lot of money, but like people are spending tens of thousands of dollars on school.
It's crazy. Like, dude, my bachelor's degree in songwriting was $97,000. What? What? For $97,000, I could start 5 companies right now. Literally, from the ground up, I could start 5 companies with that money. And like those companies would net me millions of dollars. 97 grand? What? It's staggering.
Yeah. And there is a lot of information that's also free on the internet.
Yes.
And you can take that and you can do what you want with it.
100%.
And it's crazy.
Yeah. Which we didn't have too much of that. Like, I don't think YouTube was around.
I mean, YouTube was founded in 2010. So it's like, it's so funny. We can't imagine a world with no YouTube, and it's really just 11 years old. It's kind of crazy to think about. But yeah, when I started doing YouTube in 2012, I remember my eyes bugged out of my head because there were these guys like Tyler Ward and like Lindsey Sterling, the fiddle player and stuff on YouTube that were making $850,000 a year on their YouTube channel. I was like, wait, what? And that's your brain breaks. Now that's like run of the mill. Like the number of like 7-figure entrepreneurs I know is absolutely off the charts, but like your college professors aren't them. Your college professors aren't the 7 and 8 figure. They're not dealing with 8-figure exits. You know what I mean? They didn't sell a company for 8 figures and then decide to come to your school and teach you out of the kinds of their hearts. They didn't do that. They're out being successful. You know what I mean? You should only ever take advice from people who are doing the thing that you want to do. You know what I'm saying? Like if some doctor is like, oh, Justin, you're eating a lot of meat, you know, and you you shouldn't be doing this or that. And I'm just like, hey, doc, take your shirt off. Let's compare. I'm not going to take advice from that guy. Sorry. Like, I know it sounds like shitty, but it's just like you really start and think about, like, most kids are getting advice given to them from adults who are grown-up children who have never done anything. They've never taken a risk. They've never made a lot of money. They've never started their own company. And they think that they're giving you good advice. They love you, and they are trying to give you advice that they think is good advice, but they literally cannot understand. My dad ran a IT company, ran a tech company for 28 years. He cannot wrap his head around what I do in e-commerce. He has no idea. Has worked with computers his whole life. Say, I don't get it. E-commerce didn't exist when he founded his company. You know, so as much as he tries to give me advice and his heart is in the right place, if I follow his advice exactly, Clovis would not be a thing. MedChoice wouldn't be a thing. You know what I mean? He was very nervous about MedChoice in the beginning, and now it's $2 million a year in revenue. They can't understand it. So it's not that your parents are bad people or the teachers are bad people. They're trying to help you, but they're giving you terrible advice, and they don't know they're giving you terrible advice.
Yeah, I probably wouldn't be here if I took my parents' advice, like, at all.
There you go.
Yeah.
So you already have some experience in that. Keep doing that.
Yeah.
I was just saying, thank you so much for coming on. It was good catching up too. I think I can't remember the last time I talked. I mean, we talk probably last year. I think it was maybe before the pandemic. But always good catching up. Appreciate it. Glad to hear things are going well, and family's doing well. Still love to have your dad come on the podcast.
He would do that in a heartbeat. He would love that. Yeah.
I feel like I remember one thing your dad said to me a long time ago. He was talking to both of us, and he's like, "What's the number one reason people stay at companies?" And we were probably like 13, 14 years old. Like, he asked us. I don't know why he asked us that question. And like, assumedly, like, the question, like, it was just like, oh, money or whatever. And he's just like, and I think it was like their level of ownership. Having like a say. And like, that always stuck with me, and I know he's always done really well in business. I'd love to talk to him, like, from that standpoint of, like, I'm sure he's had like a lot of employees working at that company.
Yeah, he had 300 employees by the time he was out of there.
He literally started, like, just him, right?
Oh yeah, my dad has no college degrees. I think he has 2 associate's degrees, no bachelor's degrees, no nothing. Grew up on welfare, and scaled the company to 100 million a year. He's one of the most impressive humans I've ever met in my life. It's amazing.
We'll see you next time. Moving the Mountain Creative Leadership Podcast. Justin Nault, you can check him out. Do you want to drop a couple, like, your handles?
Yeah. So everything on social, Instagram, Facebook, and YouTube is at That Clovis Life. So youtube.com/That Clovis Life. Facebook, the handle on Instagram is That Clovis Life. I have the Clovis Culture Podcast. And then for anything products related, just go to iamclovis.com and you can get everything right there.
Awesome. All right, man. Well, thank you again, and we'll see you next time.